A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our audience who have already joined us in this session. Thanks for your patience. I know a lot of you have been waiting for some time for this session to start. We'll just kick it off in about one or 2 minutes, just waiting for a few more people to join. We have today with us audience joining us from, at least we've seen registrations from, of course, US, Europe, but also Asia Pacific. And I can imagine, and also Middle East. I can imagine it's awfully late for a few people, or maybe early in the day. Really glad that all of you could join. And I'm seeing registrations coming in as we are here also. I'm going to turn off my mailbox. All right, we already have a sizable audience joining us here. I would like to welcome all of you to this webcast from Future Market Insights about growth opportunities in the plant-based food market. For those of you who are new to our event series, Future Market Insights is a market research and consulting company. We have offices in Delaware, London, Dubai, with a delivery center in Pune. We have been partnering with clients in the food and beverage, consumer markets, retail, on all aspects of business transformation, among other industries, of course. And I would like to warmly welcome our speakers who have given us time for this session. And I will introduce our speakers. We have with us Alison Rapschnuck, who is Business Development Director of Plant-Based Protein at Kerry, and she's responsible for the Radical portfolio of clean label ingredients. Prior to Kerry, she was Director of Corporate Engagement at the Good Food Institute, responsible for accelerating growth of the alternative protein ecosystem. Thanks for joining us, Alison. We have with us Danny O'Malley. He's on voice. Hi, Danny.
Hello.
He's not even on video because he's at an event right now as we speak. He is founder and president of Before the Butcher, an innovative plant-based company and producer of uncut and mainstream plant-based protein brands. Before founding his own company, he was head of sales at Beyond Meat. We also have with us Nandini Roy Chaudhary. She is client partner at Future Market Insights for food and beverage. She advises industry leaders in this sector on growth opportunities, sales effectiveness, and business transformation. Her expertise is vegan and plant-based, of course, but also functional food and ingredients. Thanks for joining us, Nandini. Thanks for joining us, Danny. And we have a fourth speaker who is not with us in person right now because she's based in Sydney, and this is awfully early in the morning for her. So we have pre-recorded her session, and we'll play it for you during the course of this webcast. She's Anna Turvol, who is Head of Investor Relations at B2 Food, which is a growing Australian brand in plant-based food. Prior to B2, she's worked at Goldman Sachs as an investment banker in the consumer markets division. So again, a very warm welcome to our speakers. And before we kick this off, for our audience who are joining us from all over the world, just a few pointers. that this session is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording tomorrow via email. The audience is muted automatically by the system, but if you have a question, because we'll do an audience Q&A at the end of this session, please leave your questions in the comment box, and we will take your questions at the end. If we are not able to take a few questions because of time, please be rest assured that we will revert to you over an email tomorrow or over the weekend. Um, and of course, I just wanted to give a quick glimpse of the audience that we have today. It's a very interesting mix of large food and beverage brands, vegan and plant-based startup companies. We have a lot of investor companies who are interested in vegan and plant-based. We have media who cover plant-based to a large extent. We also have plant-based food institutions, plant-based food associations all over the world. We have universities who are researching on plant-based. So it's a very exciting mix of audience that we have today. And considering the audience we have prepared the agenda for the session. So let's kickstart this session. Thank you all for joining again. Now, when we talk about plant-based trend, it's not anything new, right? It's been there for the last 6-7 years, or maybe even a decade. But what is happening is extremely interesting now, that we see that there is a growing momentum of plant-based going mainstream. And that has been possible simply because of some of these innovative brands who are bringing out new formats or innovation in ingredients, for example, to understand what the texture should be to bring out that right quality. And this is what is driving consumers to try plant-based more and more, as a result of which we see a lot of investments pouring into the market, which is really giving it a big boost going forward. So today in the session, what we'll cover are 4 key aspects. First, talking about the market outlook. So what is the market growth prospect looking like? Which are the new formats in terms of food products or ingredients? What are the innovations happening? We'll touch upon winning imperatives in this market. So what are the competing to win in this market? And we'll also touch upon which are the most promising go-to-market channels and a future outlook. So these are some of the questions we hope to address in this. And starting off, looking towards you, Nandini, you have been analyzing this market, and that's your expertise. So if you could touch upon what is the growth prospect from your perspective. And you have a few slides, right? So I will just share my screen at the moment. Yeah, I think you can see the slides, right?
Yeah. So thank you, Aditi. So as you rightly said, that it is a very well-known fact that plant-based food are gaining traction and very fast. The consumer base for plant-based products as well as their drivers is increasingly diverse. Product variety, labels, lifestyles, eating habits, all these factors have evolved throughout the last decade and have certainly become more complex. So when discussing different products and eating habits, it is important to be precise in the terminology to ensure clarity and avoid misunderstanding of the target market. Not everyone is transitioning into fully plant-based lifestyle. As the benefit of plant-based diets become more apparent, more people are starting to limit their meat intake or are becoming the so-called flexitarians. In fact, almost 1/3 of the Americans have reduced their meat and dairy consumption and consider themselves as flexitarians. So now is the time when it has become very easy for people to convert into flexitarianism because the products are diverse, they are trending, and the taste and texture is also diverse. So flexitarians are something which is purely, clearly driving the market. Next slide, please. Now, protecting the earth, animal, workers, and one's health are the main drivers behind a consumer's decision to buy a plant-based product. Right now, climate change tops the chart. The shift to alternatives can make a real contribution to the efforts to combat climate change. Plant-based meat emits 30 to 90% less greenhouse gas and 51 to 91% less aquatic nutrient pollution as compared to its meat counterpart. Worldwide, American agricultural contributes more to climate change than exhaust emission from the entire transportation sector. So plant-based meat solves both these types of problems between its resource efficiency and its appeal to consumers from health perspective. Plant-based food, specifically meat, has tremendous potential to help build a sustainable food supply chain. Next slide. Now here we can clearly see the various categories which are evolving in the plant-based ecosystem, and we can clearly see that plant-based milk and the other dairy alternatives have the larger chunk. And when we talk about just the growth perspective, then plant-based eggs are next in line. And considering all these food categories, in US, the plant-based food retail sales, it grew to around 27% as compared to 2020, than just the retail food market. So we can see that how much just for a country's potential can be when we are talking about vegan or specifically plant-based categories. Next slide, please. Now, if we discuss how much is the actual consumption, then about 13 million metric ton of alternative proteins were consumed globally in 2021, and which is just 2% of the animal protein. And we expect the consumption will increase to more than 7 times of that size over the next decade. Our baseline expectation for the growth of alternative protein market is assumed to be very consistent with the patterns of factors such as consumer acceptance, regulatory approvals, technology change. And any of these assumptions will affect the market mostly on the upside and positive side. And any further efforts on the part of scientists, startups, incumbent food brands, investors, it will lead to technological change and will improve the product quality. And with all these factors into consideration, alternative proteins can be expected to grow by around 22% of the market by 2035. So regardless of whether any of these alternative scenarios come to pass, substantial capital must be invested across the protein value chain to support the overall protein transformation. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, there has been a growth of 540% jump in the investment as compared to 2019 investment scenarios. Increasingly, investors are seeing the success of the companies such as Beyond Meat and Oatly and wanting a piece of the vegan pie. From investors' perspective, animal welfare, sustainability, health, environmental concerns, all these factors are driving the demand, particularly for the section of society which is vegan, millennial, and Gen Z. And these tend to be the early adopters of plant-based food alternatives. However, the companies who want to attract funds, they need to slowly have to show the potential to last, and that hanging on the coattails of this recent wave won't be enough. So we can say that right now the marketplace is bullish on the plant-based companies. Next slide. Now, talking about more about the investment and the go-to strategies that we can offer is that investors are seeing funds going to a range of different products, which includes meat, egg, plant-based seafood, snacks, and dairy alternatives. And many would agree that there are still various white spaces and untapped areas into this industry. And investors need to understand that they actually have to move away from the heavily processed foods. The newest wave of innovation in the plant-based alternative products seem to be around clean labels with natural and easy to understand ingredients. And consumers are conceptually moving away from lab-based food to food-based food. So it is very important that brands use funds to improve their nutritional profile rather than just focusing upon scaling up the production, because almost 70% of the funds that are being invested in the industry are used just for increasing the production capacity. So nutritional profile is a very important factor. Trust and transparency is again an important phenomenon. Having a product definition and credible label for vegan and plant-based food can build trust for both the market actors and will reduce confusion for the consumers. And communication and marketing should be very honest and realistic without exaggerating on or sugarcoating facts. We cannot operate in a vegan vacuum. So avoid ideology, veganism and vegan food. These terms are still have negative connotation in various countries. Plant-based food is more neutral term, and it can be properly defined, and the benefits should be linked to health, climate, water usage, CO2 emission, and sourcing needs to be better communicated. So we need to understand who the target audience is and update the branding and marketing as per the country or the target market. So for instance, in India, who is the biggest, larger producer and consumer of milk. So you cannot just sell dairy alternatives just like that in the market. So it is pertinent that entrepreneurs take a note of the same as they try to build their business in this segment. And to be candid, disruption is a subjective concept, and for any disruption to become a long-term sustainable business opportunity, there are multiple wheels that need to move together. The unique challenges that every country possesses for the entrepreneurs and investors might make it challenging, but not impossible. So yeah, over to you, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Nandini. And you capture some very interesting points. Like you said, the consumption is there, but yet we've just touched probably only 2% of the animal protein market, and it can go up to 22%. And you said, some key things on, what brands and manufacturers or players in this industry should think about, when they are marketing their brands, because consumers today have become smart. They want more and more, facts, not sugar coated marketing, but real facts behind what's in your product and how does it help me? What is the nutritional profile? So all that has to be taken care of. And I think, our brands are innovative in that front. They are pushing for more of health and more of nutritional profile. And we would like to hear from our industry leaders who have joined us here. So I'll begin with you, Danny. You have founded Before the Butcher. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the journey for your brand and how do you see the market evolving?
Of course. Thank you, Aditi. I appreciate being able to share the information I have and some background on my company and how we got started. I did spend a few years with Beyond Meat in sales in the early days, almost 8 years ago now. And during that time, I was able to better understand the industry and what direction I thought it was going. And how quick it was going to get there. And after about 3 years, I decided to start Before the Butcher. That was September of 2017. And one of the goals of my company from the beginning was to offer better variety, better nutrition, and at a more affordable price point. So the nutritional part was really important for us from the very beginning. It's hard to get away from the process side of the business, because to make a product that mimics animal-based protein from plants, you have to process it in a certain way. But the separation of that is most of what we eat in the animal-based protein venue, including hamburgers and other products like chicken nuggets and so on and so forth, they're all processed as well. So our journey really started in 2017. By early 2018, we were on the market, and there weren't a lot of competitors back then. There were only a few including Beyond and Impossible. We started in food service and brought out 8 what we believe were much nutritionally better products for the market at that point in time for food service. Shortly thereafter, we started working toward the retail market and trying to get some products in the retail market as well. And we launched in 2019, late 2019, our family of burgers or patties, which included a beef-like burger, a turkey, and a chicken burger, as well as our award-winning breakfast sausage patty. Now, in the United States, we were really the third ones on the market behind Beyond and Impossible. And Beyond had already done a fairly good job of securing an understanding of what it needed to be do on the retail market, and Impossible was doing quite well on the food service market at that time. So that was kind of our move forward. We know what happened in 2020, which was difficult for everybody in the industry, trying to find a way to continue to build the business and grow at a time where the food service industry dropped out completely and the retail industry was struggling with how to get products onto the shelves during the initial shutdown from COVID. So 2020 was a challenging year, not just for Before the Butcher, but most companies in plant-based meats or just in food products as a whole. And 2021, the latter part was really a rebuild. And what we've seen since late 2021 into 2022 now is tremendous growth on the food service and what we call industrial side of the business, because the expansion of plant-based meats is not just in the format of purchasing a burger or some grounds or a sausage or a chicken nugget, but it's also a tremendous expansion in other further processed products like pizzas and burritos and bowls and so on and so forth. So that opened up a huge opportunity for most of us in the plant-based meat industry to become ingredient suppliers, not just suppliers of consumer products that are purchased as is, but also ingredient suppliers. So that became very important for us in the latter part of last year and then the early part of this year, and a good part of our growth strategy moving forward into 2022 and 2023 is to build partnerships with other companies that are making plant-based products for retail and for food service venues. So the positioning in the market is very different. In 2021, the growth of plant-based meat was virtually flat. I think we're going to see an upswing in 2022. And there's a lot of interest in variety of products. So the burger, as we know, is a mainstay. That's something that people have gotten used to. It's even a market that has become saturated over the last year and a half with all the new and up and coming smaller brands that have hit the market, as well as private label and white label brands that hit the market, for larger grocery chains. Most of them have their own brand, and they're expanding those brands as well. Another great opportunity for plant-based meat companies is to work with large brands like Kroger or Target or Walmart, Whole Foods, and so on and so forth, and help them develop their own brands to get onto the market. So knowing that, I think we understand that the market, though it was fairly flat for 2021 in the plant-based meat industry, we anticipate growth and excitement behind further development of new products that haven't yet hit the market. Yet we anticipate through this year and into next year, we're going to see some exciting new products hit the market and really generate more energy for people that are interested in these types of products to reach out and try these different items as they hit the market, both in retail and in food service as well.
Right. Thanks for that, Danny. And what you mentioned is about the innovation and formats that we are seeing in the market, and that kind of leads me or the audience to think about what are the kind of ingredients that are needed to create that kind of perfect product. So I'm looking towards Alison. who has joined us from Kerry. So Alison, could you, talk a little bit about what does it mean for the ingredients market, or what is the kind of, evolution that we see for ingredients happening?
Yeah, thanks so much, Aditi, for having me. So I'm Alison Rabchnook. I work in business development for plant protein at Kerry. And if you're not familiar with Kerry, we're a global ingredient company working across the food, beverage, pet food, and pharma sectors. We have a 50-year-old heritage going back to our roots as a dairy cooperative in Ireland. And today we're a global leader in taste and nutrition. So at Kerry, our goal is pretty simple. It's to help our customers create nutritious, great tasting, and sustainable products. So we already have a very broad and deep portfolio of ingredients for plant-based product development globally, including protein, natural flavors, coatings, and clean label food preservation. And this is not but for dairy, meals, snacks, beverages. But we don't rest on our laurels. We're always listening to consumers through our proprietary research to make sure that we're continually meeting their needs and evolving alongside them, since we know that this is a very dynamic sector. So one evidence of that is next week on May 10th, we're actually launching a number of ebooks that you can find at kerry.com. So I just wanted to give a quick preview of this. Basically in 2022, we studied over 1,500 consumers across 4 countries, so US, UK, Australia, and Brazil. And it was a combination of quantitative and qualitative research, which has given us a really deep understanding of consumers' desired taste experiences specific to plant-based burgers and plant-based cheese slices. I do think, though, a lot of the findings can translate to other product formats as well. So just looking at like a highlight of the burger research, there are 4 things I wanted to point out. One is that US consumers say the benchmark for plant-based burgers is beef, ... but better. So they want a burger with only the positive taste attributes of a real burger, coupled with improved nutrition and a better environmental impact, so that the overall experience is just better. The second thing is that there is such a thing as too much flavor. So they really pointed to the need and desire for a delicate flavor balance, with salt levels that are just about right, and with flavors that are truly authentic. The third thing was that flavor alone is not enough to satisfy them. Although we know that taste
noise, right? Is there a background noise, or am I just only?
I think Danny might need to go on mute. He's not already.
Yes, Danny, if you could just go on mute. Thank you.
So back to so flavor alone is just not enough to satisfy consumers. So although we know that taste is the #1 consumer purchase motivator, in our research, it was confirmed that flavor alone is not enough. They're looking for a texture and mouthfeel that's as close as possible to real meat. And if this isn't achieved, their overall experience is definitely impacted. And then the last thing to highlight is that the cooking process is an unsung hero. They're looking for certain beef burger cooking cues, which let them know that the burger is perfectly cooked, safe to eat, and will be great tasting. I would say my favorite quote from the research from the focus group members was, "Don't just copy meat, make it better." So the bar is really high for plant-based products. It has to taste better than meat, it must be healthier than meat, and must be as clean label as possible. So findings like this point to the need for us and other ingredient suppliers to continuously improve and innovate in the ingredient segment. And we're working on this at Kerry. So just some things that I'll highlight are, we're very focused on clean label. There's not an exact definition of what clean label means, but essentially it refers to short ingredient decks with very recognizable ingredients. Things that a lot of manufacturers are trying to remove from their labels is methacellulose, titanium dioxide, which is often used to make products white, and then artificial preservatives to help with shelf life. So we are focusing on and already have substitutes actually for all of those. Another thing is heightened succulence and juiciness. So again, that goes back to replicating the full organoleptic experience of real meat. Another thing is modulation. So a lot of plant proteins inherently come with off notes that come that are there for a variety of reasons. So it's really helping manufacturers, start off with a protein that's very neutral. Another one is sodium reduction. So going back to the health motivator from consumers, a lot of the consumers are really starting to look more closely at the back of pack, and sodium is something that can be high in some of these products. And then also proteins. So I think the way that they're manufactured, there's a lot of innovation that's already happening, and I think more to come, all with the goal of creating these proteins that are more meat-like in texture. So just to wrap up, our growth strategy is all about helping our customers, the manufacturers of plant-based products, and ultimately their goal is to meet their consumers' needs. So that's what we're here for. We're a global company, so we keep tabs on the meat and dairy alternative markets in all regions, and we have teams very actively working with consumers on plant-based product development in the US, obviously, Europe, Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East. Back to you, Aditi.
Thanks, Alison. I really liked what you said, which is, coming from the focus group that you did, that, don't copy meat, make it better. And there is no doubt about the fact that, the pressure is high in this market to perform, to make it as competitive as the meat industry. And, just going back to Danny and what he said, that back then there were not too many players, that there was not too much of competition in this particular market, but now there are new brands who are mushrooming everywhere, and is getting increasingly competitive in this market itself. And therefore I would like to ask Danny, what do you think are the winning imperatives or the competing factors for a brand to thrive in this market amidst the competition?
Well, I think there are some tremendous challenges today that startups have that I did not have 5 years ago, or even a startup would have had just 3 years ago, and that is a point where we are now with saturation in certain products, especially the burger, and we're reaching that point, I think, also with chicken products. There are a lot of companies producing these products. And if you're not separating yourselves with innovation and creating something different, unique, and special, it's difficult to get out in the market unless you have tens of millions of dollars to spend in marketing and advertisement and so on and so forth, and PR in order to get in front of the consumer. So I think the real key today for innovators and for startups is to come up with something that's different than what we're seeing today on the market. And we're seeing a lot of the same thing. If you see a burger once, you've seen it 20 times with the plant-based burger on the market, because I think the last time I counted, just in the United States, there were over 30 different burgers available from various different companies, either private label, branded, or white label for grocery stores. So there is a tremendous amount of saturation in that area right now, and the ideal would be to go out and do something different. And everybody's right so far about the nutritional values and what people are looking for. Lowering, as Alison said, lowering sodium is really important. That's one of the first things that we realize the consumer looks at when they look at the back of the package, is what the sodium level is. And as consumers, especially in the United States, most of us already consume way too much sodium, more than we should have on a daily basis. And these type of products tend to be heavy on the sodium side. Now, when I started the company 5 years ago, that was one of our focuses, and we created a plant-based burger with 260 milligrams of sodium. At that time, that was about half or less than half of what the major competitors on the market were doing with their burgers. That has changed, and I think as an industry, it's important for all of us to look at what the consumer is expecting from us. So shortening the ingredient list, increasing the type of products that we're making variety-wise, creating textures that are very similar to animal-based proteins, because our job really is to mimic the burger, the chicken nugget, and other type of animal-based proteins, to the point that you may think that you're eating an animal-based protein. We're trying to create a comfort zone for the consumer, so the consumer is comfortable. And the majority of the people that eat our products are animal-based protein eaters. They are meat eaters, and they're looking for opportunities to try products that they're comfortable with. That's why a meatball or a burger or a chicken nugget or a chicken breast, chicken chunks or chicken strips and so on and so forth are so important, because this helps the consumer to eat these type of products because they're comfortable with it. So I think today, being an early mover, and it's only been 5 years for us, but we are one of the earlier adopters and early movers in the industry. That was very helpful. We were able to establish ourselves with relationships and work with companies to develop products and work with the consumers. And we have a huge variety of products already in our portfolio. A startup today would need to really look at what's on the market, realize that perhaps bringing out a beef burger substitute wouldn't be the best choice, but maybe a flavored version of it that they didn't see on the market, maybe something regional. Regional flavors are very important, and getting that out to the market is important. Starting locally, I think, if you don't have a lot of money, would be important. But as we know, there's a lot of money being raised to develop these type of products. So developing products that are naturally processed in a way that they're healthy for you can be challenging, but it also can be done. And like Allison said, there are ingredient companies like Kerry and others out there that are helping companies like mine and other startups and even the large companies to develop these type of products, to make these products healthier, to reduce the sodium, to remove the methicellulose, which is a big a challenge in our industry and has been, and find alternatives that are healthier and more appeasing to the consumers, to the public, when they look at this. The one thing really to realize here, Aditi, is the consumer that buys these type of products tends to be educated, and they're educated with food. They want to know what they're eating. They flip that package around and they look at the back of the package. They look at the nutritionals. They look at the ingredients, and they want to understand what's going into their bodies. And we're producing products that should be healthier for them. So it's important. It's a responsibility as a manufacturer to do the best that we can to produce a really delicious product that is accomplishing what the consumer is expecting from our products, which is a healthier choice. We all know that it's healthier for the planet. Environmentally, it's a lot healthier, and obviously it's healthier for the animals because we're not killing animals in order to make these type of products. But it also needs to be healthier for us as the consumer, as human beings, to eat something that's better in our system. And that's the overall goal when we try to accomplish what we're accomplishing while we're making these type of products.
Yes, and what you rightly said, Danny, that a consumer who wants to try plant-based food will try it for the health reason, right? That it's a health product. So they will increasingly look at what are the nutritional components, how clean are they, where are they sourced from, what is the transparency in the information, all of that they will demand more and more. But at the same time, because it's a flexitarian population that we are targeting, they would want it to be also taste as good as perhaps meat, so that, they can keep, having that in place of meat. So yes, the pressure is on. And you summarized all of the points really well about, what are the competing factors and, how can brands do well. Thank you so much, Danny, for that. And, moving on towards Allison now, like Danny said, that perhaps some of the formats are already saturated. Yes, they have already reached mainstream. We have a lot of burger types in the market today. But as an overall market, it is still a very niche consumer base, right? like in Nandini's slide, 2% of the total meat the meat protein market. So I wanted to know what does it take to gain commercialization, mass commercialization in this market, Alison? So if you could say a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I think the question of whether it's a niche market today actually depends on which segment of plant-based you're talking about. I would actually argue that plant-based milk, which has 40% household penetration and 15% share of the market, is actually well on its way to mass commercialization. Plant-based meat, has only right now about 1 to 2% of all meat sales, which was mentioned earlier. So yes, I think that is still a niche market. As far as what it's going to take to get all of these plant-based categories to mass commercialization, prior to Kerry, as you mentioned, I had worked at the Good Food Institute, and their theory about alt protein products achieving mass commercialization boils down to 3 things that need to happen in order for consumers to accept these products more broadly: price, taste, and convenience. So, we know that economies of scale will help bring prices down and allow more consumers to be able to afford them. And we saw, I think, pre-pandemic that the prices of many brands were going down, but now due to a lot of the global raw material supply constraints and shipping costs, prices in some cases have gone up, but that's like all food categories. So I think once some of those supply constraints have evened out and the shipping prices have come down, I think the prices of the plant-based products will continue to go down and eventually become competitive with the products they're replacing. I'd actually like to call out an interesting example of a manufacturer who is rethinking the manufacturing process in order to bring down costs. There's a company called Rebellious, which you may have heard of. They're a plant-based chicken company in the Pacific Northwest, and they just announced a patent-pending production system that aims to produce plant-based meat at price parity with traditional meat. So I think there are a lot of different ways that manufacturers are trying to do this. Back to the price, taste, convenience. On the taste front, I've already described earlier what the challenges and opportunities are to make alt protein products taste as good as, if not better than, the products they're replacing. So that's what Kerry is here to help manufacturers do. And then on the last point, convenience. Who would have thought that even 3 years ago that we'd find plant-based burgers and nuggets on the menus of restaurants like Burger King and Kentucky Fried Chicken, or that retailers like Walmart, Target, and Kroger would have really robust sections of their stores dedicated to plant-based offerings. I mean, I've even seen plant-based meat in the frozen case of my local drugstore chain. So, there are so many new products coming on the market. As Danny mentioned, the burger category is very well saturated. But I do think that the number of products on menus and shelves will only keep growing, and category managers are going to struggle to fit so many brands. And then our hope is that they're going to start increasing the shelf space of this category. So I do believe plant-based will achieve mass commercialization, and Kerry agrees, which is why it's one of our 4 global priority areas across the company.
Indeed, thanks, Alison. And yes, what we see from our research is also the same. And like I said in the beginning, all of these points taken together, the fact that there are more investments, the fact that companies such as yourself or Before the Butcher or other companies who are bringing in new innovation every day, it's actually driving consumers more and more towards that awareness of plant-based and towards trying more and more plant-based, and that is what will boost the market going forward. There has been a few points raised again and again in this session, which is about price parity, which is about how to achieve scale in this market. And now, I'm going to play the pre-recording of Anna Turvol, who is head of investor relations at B2 Food. And B2 Food is an Australian brand, like I said, which is built in partnership with Competitive Foods in Australia, which is the franchisee of Burger King in Australia. So we would like to hear from her a little bit about how her company is achieving scale and is, achieving the price competitiveness in the market. And I will share my screen to play the video, and I hope it works because, well, technology, you can never tell. So, well, here I go.
I'll just take a minute to set this up. Okay. Yeah. Let me know if y'all can hear this. Like our speakers, just unmute yourself and let me know.
We were founded in 2019, rolling out of the Australian Science, CSIRO is the Australian Science Agency, a partnership between CSIRO and our founding CEO, Nick Hazel. We launched, as I mentioned, with the Rebel Whopper, which was in partnership with Hungry.
I just wanted to ask our speakers if you can hear this video. That means our audience can as well.
Yes. All good.
You can hear? Okay, great. Daniel, could you go on mute, please? Danny, can you hear me? Okay, thank you.
In partnership with Hungry Jack's, which is the Australian Burger King. And after that, we launched into retail and also food service, QSR. So the product has been, adopted well. V2, our aim is to be price parity and of equal taste to be able to win with the consumer. People, want to be able to go to the supermarket and look at the price of, say, beef mince and the price of V2 mince and not have to make a sustainable choice based on price. We've done this with different methods, primarily collaboration and agreements with co-manufacturers, so that we're able to then plug in to those existing supply chains and work together to be able to supply our end consumer. We, have also the methods that we use for our ingredients have, without going into too much detail and explaining all, but we've definitely had this at the forefront of our minds in the processing and manufacturing. And I think, we've all seen the reports recently that, I think there's going to need to be around 800 new facilities for ingredient processing for raw materials. And I think that, the spend will be up to something like 27 billion for that to be able to support the growth of plant-based meat and to have the inputs available for the growth in appetite up to 2050. So whether, plant-based meat companies are using pea or soy or fava, the opportunity exists for all of us to be able to grow, to be able to support this protein demand that will happen as our population growth hits the 10 billion by 2050. Our ability to scale has been with by working with partners. We see that, if we want to scale quickly, we work with our local co-manufacturers. We're able to turn on capability in the form where supply chains are already existing and plug into those supply chains. Then we're able to also look at, I think you mentioned consumer demand and how we can meet that if it's rapidly expanding. I think the opportunity to either be manufacturing locally, but to have these models that I refer to, of model 1, 2, and 3 on company and country expansion, then we're able to work with local manufacturers as well with our ingredients that already have our IP in terms of our textured proteins, to then work with local manufacturers to supply international markets. For ingredient sourcing, soy is our primary ingredient in our plant-based meat product. We see that there's actually a huge opportunity for growth in Australia for domestic growing. And as mentioned before, we're seeing key findings that the ingredient and facility constraints into the future, by 2050, there'll need to be this huge investment for a lot of the supply chains. So up to $27 billion in investment for raw ingredient manufacturing. So it's almost like going upstream of plant-based meat will be another investment opportunity and another growth industry, because the rise of plant-based meat has meant that we need to have these raw ingredients. So we're very cognizant of our sourcing, as I mentioned, partnering with Australian farmers so that we're able to grow an industry where we can, extract our own soy locally and be able to then produce a lot of this demand internationally.
Okay, so that was Anna Trevol, and I'm glad the video just went so smooth, because in our practice session earlier, there was constantly some problem or the other. Okay, and at this stage, I see that there are many hands from our audience. They have a few questions. We'll just come back to that, just capturing a little bit about the last part of the session, which is around the most promising go-to-market channels. V2 Food, for example, very interesting, where she said about food service being their primary channel. And for a lot of other brands, probably that's the same. But we would like to hear from Danny himself. Danny, what do you think are the most promising go-to-market channels for your company or for the industry in general?
Well, I agree with that. I think food service is a tremendous channel right now. Retail is a bit saturated, oversaturated, as we talked about earlier, with burgers and grounds. Even the chicken nuggets and chicken products are getting saturated very quickly in the retail end. Where I think the biggest opportunity is past the food service. And one of the reasons food service is such a great channel right now is there's a rebuilding from the shutdown from COVID, and that's still in process, with new restaurants opening after restaurants closed, or chains rebuilding their menus. A lot of chains and restaurants reduced their menu during COVID in order to handle the reduction in ability to get their ingredients, as well as staffing. So I think it certainly is a great channel right now in food service. But where I see the greatest opportunity is really in what I call industrial or ingredient-based. And I spoke about it a little bit earlier. And that's companies like mine that produce plant-based meats in a form that is friendly to further processors. So if there's a pizza manufacturer that perhaps makes regular pizzas with cheese and meat products on it, is interested now in making plant-based pizzas because that's the hit-in thing, they really, just like they would go and look for somebody to make them an Italian sausage or a pepperoni, they wouldn't make that themselves. It's the same thing with plant-based meat. So they're coming to companies like mine and saying, hey, can you make us a pepperoni, or do you have a pepperoni, or do you have an Italian sausage? And so I think that opportunity is huge, because in the grocery store, and we're no longer on the perimeter now, we're talking about the center of the grocery store, in the frozen departments mostly, but even the fresh plant-based department tends to be more toward the center of the store. There are a lot of further processors that are making bowls, burritos, pizzas, and so on and so forth, that need companies like ours to make them the ingredient, which would be the meat ingredient or the plant-based meat ingredient to go in or on their products. So for me, from what I'm seeing, that's an explosive area in the industry and a tremendous area for growth for plant-based meat companies to look at opportunities and to partner up with other companies. We do that as well. We partner with companies and we co-brand with them on their packaging to get in the stores, not just with our products that we brand ourselves, but with their products and our name additionally. So there are distinct advantages to doing that. And there are challenges. Part of that would be scaling up. It tends to be much higher volume, and you have to scale up to handle that volume. And understanding how to get there is important. But I think as we look at the next couple of years and moving forward in the plant-based industry as a whole, not just plant-based meat, but plant-based industry as a whole, we're going to continue to see plant-based products expand into every food category and grow. in every food category in retail. And I think that's really important. And it's important for producers like ourselves and for other producers, even in plant-based dairy industry and seafood, to recognize that there are further processors that will help us continue to grow our business and perhaps even get more visibility by co-branding with them as they put different products on the shelves that we may not have the capability of making.
Thanks for that, Danny. And we just have 5 more minutes in this session. So in the interest of time, I'll just go to a few audience questions because they've been patiently hearing to us for this long. The first question, let me see. Yeah, the first question is for you, Danny. You spoke about price parity in the beginning. How is your company achieving price parity in this market?
That's a good question. I mean, we really analyzed that deeply with the shutdown of COVID 2 years ago now, and the understanding that many consumers, when they go into the grocery store and look at a certain product, let's just say a burger, because that's the easiest thing to talk about, and we've been able to place the plant-based burgers right next to the beef burgers or turkey burgers in the market, on the perimeter, in the refrigerated areas, and also in the freezer areas. I think the key here is being able to, and Allison spoke about this too, being able to price our products so the consumer doesn't have to think about price when they're making a decision. They're going to think about their own personal health, perhaps the health of the planet or animals, and they're going to make a decision that's based on what they want and not based on what they can afford. So we, a year and a half ago, decided to create a secondary brand called Mainstream, and we're all talking about getting into the mainstream. That is the name of our brand, and we created a burger that has very similar price parity by scaling up. You know, we've been doing this for almost 5 years now, so we have a better ability to scale up, as all of us has spoken about before. That helps to reduce cost, as well as source better. And make decisions on whether or not we were going to place certifications on our products as well. So our product is non-GMO, but that product specifically is not non-GMO project verified like all of our other products. So it's all money and you find ways to pare down. And I think as time goes on, as Allison said, we will all find a way to find that price parity with animal-based proteins.
Thanks for that, Danny. And I see a few attendees who are raising their hands. Put in your questions in the chat box, and then we can take them. But we have time for just one other question, and that's for you, Allison, because it's for Kerry. How is Kerry helping alternative protein brands reach scale?
Great. Thanks for that question. So yeah, I mean, Kerry is a globally led company, but we execute regionally, and I think that's super important. I think Danny mentioned this earlier about the fact that there's a lot of opportunity for different cuisines, different flavors to start coming into this category. So that's something that we have a lot of expertise in. We do taste charts annually, which again analyze the taste of really the future. So our R&D and culinary teams do a great job of working with customers to balance that taste, texture, mouthfeel, and nutrition that we've been talking about. So please reach out to me if you're interested in hearing more about how we work with customers. And I think lastly, as some of the existing brands look to broaden their horizons, potentially start manufacturing in other regions of the world, our regulatory expertise really helps companies, understand what potentially could be allowed or not allowed in those different countries. So,
thank you, Allison. For the rest of the audience questions, thanks a lot for your questions. We'll revert back on an email with the answers to you. Rest assured on that. But I would like to end the show with a few, closing remarks from our speakers, starting with you, Nandini. Danny spoke a little bit about the go-to-market channels. According to you, which are the most effective that we'll see going forward?
Yes. So Aditi, Allison, Danny, both of them, they very correctly pointed out that restaurants, food service, QSRs, or even the retail stores. They are the next in line target markets. All these things are with respect to the selling point of view. I would just like to highlight what the consumers perceive based upon the various categories. So, for example, if you're talking about plant-based seafood, then plant-based seafood is something that consumers are not very much familiar right now. So they would like to go ahead and have a taste into the restaurant. So just for the seafood category, maybe QSR is a better option. As Jenny said, that burgers are quite a matured market. That is something that can be easily ordered via online, because consumers now know what vegan burger tastes like and how it feels like. But when we come to plant-based snacks or even the milk alternatives, so for these kind of categories which are more consumerized, people tend to go to the store-based retailing. They want to flip the product, check the prices, they want to have an experience of the shelf with various type of packaging, branding, marketing, and they want to have that particular experience to understand each and every product. So I think for some of the products which are a bit matured, like the Whoppers or the rolls or burgers, online can serve as the next retail channel. For seafood, I can confidently say that I think QSR will be the only thing for now. But for the other consumerized products, where the consumers are still in a process of knowing the final product, I think store-based will be a better option for the brands to launch into. Yeah.
Thank you, Nandini, and more of that in future market insights reports across all of the formats of plant-based across all markets and regions, where you will find both supply and demand side data, retail sales data. Do check our research summaries out on our website. And moving towards you, Alison, what would you say is the closing remark? We've spoken so much about the market. What is the outlook?
Sure. Yeah, I know we're at time, so I'll be quick, but I really think the outlook is very good for plant-based. The way that I always tell everybody to think of it is wherever there is meat or dairy, there could be plant-based meat or dairy. So going beyond the burger and the nugget, it's every food category. And Danny alluded to this as well. It could be in the form of pizza toppings, burrito inclusions, seafood, eggs, shelf-stable snacks. It really is endless. So overall, I really do think the category has a very long runway ahead of it.
Great. And Danny, any remarks from you on the outlook? Any closing remarks?
Yes, Aditi, I would say look for new and exciting products to hit the shelf as we go through 2022 and into 2023. I think we're going to see some really neat things hit the shelf, some better pepperonis, bacon, maybe even whole body meats like a steak or a really nice chicken breast. As we head toward the end of the year, they may be sparse and hard to get at the beginning, but we're going to see more and more of that. And it's going to be really exciting for the industry as we go into new products that excite the consumer as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Danny. We've reached the end of this webinar, and I really thank our speakers for their time and for the insights, and our audience being so attentive throughout the session. Our audience will receive a copy of the slides that were shown in the beginning, as well as a recording of this session, as well as the answers to your questions. So we'll definitely revert to you over email. Thank you all for joining, and look forward to seeing each one of you in our next series on this particular topic. And have a good rest of your day or a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Aditi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.